What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by FanDuel. I am Chris Raybon, and this is your AFC betting preview part one. In this episode, we're going to talk the AFC East, and we're going to talk the AFC South. Part two will be out later, and it will be covering the AFC North and the AFC West. And here to break down all of the teams, all of the outlooks, all of the predictions, the Prime Minister of Degenerate Nation, my good friend Stucky. Stuck, what is going on?
What's up, brother? Football's in the air. 17 days. I'm excited to chop it up with you all season again. Let's hopefully win everybody a bunch of money again and have a hell of a year. But it's good to be back and excited to talk some NFL. We'll be doing 4 episodes, 2 divisions in each over the next 2 days. So get ready. It's time. It's go time.
Yes, sir. It's go time. So hope everyone out here finds some value from these. Obviously, we'll be back all season long during our weekly pod with the 6-pack. But here, we're just going to kind of go preview each team, talk about their win total, any other bets we might like over or under, just our general outlooks. Let's start in the AFC. And I just want to get your kind of general thoughts on the AFC, because from my vantage point, I think you have the Bills, you have the Chiefs, you have the Bengals, and then you have a real gauntlet where I just feel like there are, pretty much a half dozen, if not more, teams that are in the running for those 4 wild card spots. Is that kind of how you see the AFC as well, or are there more tiers as you kind of power rank these teams?
Yeah, I mean I think those are the 3 clear best teams in the AFC from a power rating perspective, but there's a bit, like you said, a significant second tier, and I think cracking the code of the AFC is trying to figure out who of those teams can potentially emerge from the fold and who is going to fail to live up to expectations. But it is a gauntlet of a conference. The
Yes.
difference between the AFC and NFC is just shocking. So from a macro perspective, and we'll talk about this when we do our NFC previews, but when I was looking for longer shots to try and find a potential long shot for a Super Bowl future, I basically threw out the AFC. It's almost impossible for me to see any team with very long odds. Number one, getting to the playoffs in the AFC, and then number 2, going through the caliber of quarterbacks that you would have to beat in the AFC to get to the Super Bowl. So I really focused for my long shot exercise on the NFC, because I think it's a much more viable path for one of these longer shots in the NFC to just get through that conference, which is much weaker, and then it's one game in the Super Bowl. So yeah, it's the AFC is going to be brutal once again, and it'll be fun to watch. Can't wait.
Yeah, exactly. Gauntlet is the word I keep coming back to as well for the AFC. So let's start off with the Buffalo Bills. Their win total at FanDuel is 10.5. The over is juiced up to about minus 144. Sean McDermott has led this team to the over 5 of his 6 years as the head coach, but we know double-digit win totals tend to not be plus EV bets. Going back to 2002 when the NFL expanded to 32 teams, double-digit win totals are just 50, 64, and 6. That's about a 44% win rate for Buffalo.
What's that win rate if you remove the Chiefs? Basically, the Chiefs are all of those wins.
Yeah, probably goes another percent down, so probably 43% instead of 44. But I think if the Bills are to fall short of that total, offensive line might be a good place to start. Deion Dawkins, really the only guy that graded out above average last year. And, Quessenberry's struggling. Shell retired. Doyle's hurt. You got a rookie at right guard as well. So what are your thoughts about the Bills? For me, I think the O-line is something where I'd be a little bit concerned.
Yeah, that's the red flag with the Bills coming into this season. I mean, if you look last year, I mean, this is a team. I think people have soured on the Bills maybe a little too much. Football in the NFL, the margins are so thin. I mean, if they squib kick it, they win a Super Bowl. And last year, I had them power rated as at the end of the regular season as the number one team in the NFL. They won 13 games, and they shit the bed against the Bengals. It happens. It's one game. This is still one of the best teams. Team that I have power rated, actually number one coming into the season, right there with the Chiefs. But the offensive line and just how it's looked and some of the injuries is a major concern. But if you look at last season, they did all that, the 13 wins with Allen potentially being hobbled. He wasn't fully healthy with the injury he was dealing with. And the defense just was absolutely ravaged with injuries. Now you get Hyde and Poyer reunited at safety. And I really spent a lot of time trying to dig into, and it's part of it's a guessing game. But when are Hyde and Poyer going to, fall off the cliff, right? They're getting older. I still think that they have one more really good year together as a duo. And in McDermott's system, it's very reliant on safeties. They do so much, and they know the system so well. And they allow the Bills to do so many different things on that defense. Now, there's a question at one of the linebacker spots, but if Tre'Davious White can get back to, he was hurt recovering from injury as well. Basically their three defensive captains didn't play a single snap together last year. And then you have the Von Miller injury. And Von Miller, Hyde, I think getting rest at their age, might be a good thing coming into this year. But the defense will be able to do so many more things with those safeties back. And if Von Miller, when he comes back healthy, the defense is just at a different level when they're able to generate natural pressure, and he can still do that. Second corner, still a bit of a question. I think you're going to see a lot of heavy nickel and more dime. Put Taylor Rapp in there, who they signed near the line of scrimmage more often. But I really like the defense. It's going to watch what they do with that other linebacker spot. I'm not a Bernard guy. And that second corner, if someone can emerge. But this defense should be really good. The offense obviously still has Josh Allen. It just comes down to the offensive line, which could ruin everything. This team's still going to win. They're going to go to the playoffs, barring injury disaster. But that's really what's either going to make or break them reaching where Bills fans expect them to go to the AFC Championship, potentially win a Super Bowl. It's that offensive line, and that's what I'll be watching early and often because it's definitely a potential problem area.
Yeah, I think the defense is, to your point, going to continue to be very good. Last season, the defense was second, had the second most adjusted games lost due to injury, according to Football Outsiders. They kind of look at all the games missed and kind of adjust it to weight starters more. But they were number 2 on offense. And I think this year, the offense may go through some more struggles. The O-line, they're also kind of going away from, I think, that super spread look. I think they're going to go more Dalton Kincaid and try to force defenses to either go with, and that's so they're going to try to go to more, make a defense. If you go base, we're going to beat you with Kincaid on a linebacker. But if you go nickel, we're going to try to run a little more. So I think that could be good for them. But it could also make them a little bit of a different kind of team. They may win lower scoring games. They might be a team we're looking at unders more early in the year before the market adjusts. But out of the teams we're going to talk about that have a double-digit win total, I think in the AFC at 10.5, I still feel better out the Bills than anybody in that AFC North, where it's just kind of it's a gauntlet really between all 4 teams. The Chiefs I feel okay about as well, but I think, I'm not as down on the Bills as I expected to be. I thought their win total might even be 11.5. But at 10.5, I think it could go either way at this point. But yeah, the O-line is a real concern. The defense should be good to go. But I think the offense will look different regardless with more 2 tight end looks.
Yeah, I also think I love the addition of Kincaid. And you're going to see more 2 tight end looks. they can create a lot of matchup problems now with Kincaid in the fold. And, it's year 2 of Dorsey calling plays, getting a little bit more comfortable as an offensive coordinator, making some adjustments. So you could see potentially a bump there. And I agree with you. I project the Bills to win. Now, their win total is over 10.5 juice. That's like, really
it's more
10,
like 11.
10-9.
Yeah, exactly.
But I project them 11.4. And part of that is, I think you agree with me. We're going to get to them in a sec. We think the Jets are a tad bit overrated. I think the Patriots are in for a really long, tough year. And the Dolphins, we'll talk about them, but I've soured a bit on Miami. So, part of that Bills projection of 11.4 obviously takes some of that into account. So, yeah, if I had to bet the Bills win total, I would actually go over.
I mean, they played 16 games last year. They won 13 of them. One of the losses was a loss that probably you play that game 1,000 more times, they don't lose. Was the game against Minnesota.
How about the game against Miami? You play that 1,000 times, they probably don't lose that.
A 2-point loss to Miami in Miami when everyone just had heat exhaustion, and a 3-point loss to the Jets, which, in the division, that's fair, but you had no losses by more than 3 points. You went 13-3. Now the win total is 10.5. So, yeah, I thought this was going to be a team that I would end up fading. You kind of, anytime you have a team that has so much success, you kind of think like that entering the year. But I do think that the defenses in this division are tough, but 10.5, a little bit too low for me for Buffalo, so I'd win over as well. Let's talk about the Miami Dolphins, because they, I think both of us kind of agreed they looked like that team that if there were going to be a team to kind of upset the Bills, Miami would be right there and maybe a little underrated compared to the Jets. But Jalen Ramsey, losing him for whatever amount of time, he's going to be out till some point in the season. That knocks the defense down a peg. Xavier Howard's also 30, which I know, you always kind of talked about. Cornerbacks tend to kind of go downhill around that age. And he started to last year even. He was graded out just in a 33rd percentile among corners at PFF. So what are your thoughts on Miami as it stands right now?
Yeah, by the way, speaking of the Dolphins and the Bills, to tie the two together, the best news I can give Bills fans this year is you will travel down to Miami week 18, the heat is the lowest it can possibly be. The Ramsey loss is huge. He could have done, him and Holland Vic Fangio could have done so many different things with both of them, and now with him injured, I have my doubts about Howard. As you mentioned, now 30, trending downward, 30 and dealing with a lot of injuries in recent seasons, and the trajectory isn't great. So I have major questions about the secondary in a 180 of a scheme change. I love Fangio, but there's going to be an adjustment period here. Yeah. I'm really
that's going
curious.
From a lot of man in the last scheme to a lot more zone, right?
Yep. And and from single high to double high, way fewer blitzes. You're gonna, it's a lot more simulated pressures, and just the philosophy of Fangio's defenses are really confuse the quarterback, force them into a lot of shorter throws, take away the explosive play, and eventually making a team go down the field. You're going to create havoc, make a play, force 3.5, force a turnover. Big philosophical shift from what Miami did before, and it might take some time, maybe a season or two. Speaking of adjustments, I'm also curious to see what McDaniel does with this offense, because the league adjusted to him. This offense was untouchable for the first, until they played the Chargers. Ironically, teams started playing more press man and getting up into, these smaller, speedier receivers and throwing off the timing.
Yes.
And, then Tua went out. So we didn't really see McDaniel kind of counter back. What's he going to do? And he's had a whole offseason to look at it. And the interesting thing is they start with the Chargers. So we're going to see, the Chargers kind of had the antidote for what they were doing, and now we'll see them play in week 1. I still have, some questions about the offensive line, but I want to see how they adjust on offense. And then can Tua stay healthy? I mean, you have that many concussions. It's just one hit. Like, this is a thing that it's not like, hey, I'm healthy now. Like, this is a compounding thing when you have concussions. So that's certainly a concern. So, yeah, I think the defense is going to take some time. The Ramsey loss is just massive. I project Miami, and their win total sitting around 9.5. I'm pretty
It's actually
on.
even on both sides. Yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty spot on the 9.5. So I don't see any value in the win total. But, I would say a couple months ago, it was a team that I was thinking about potentially looking at for a long shot in semi-long shot in the AFC or the division. And I've decided to pass there after kind of digging deeper.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think Miami's win total 9.5 is about right. I think in that 9 to 9.5 range is right. But I think Miami's probably going to be a little more run heavy. And I was at that Charger game to me it just looked like having more guys up at the line of scrimmage, having more zones in that short to intermediate area. It just seemed like it took Tua extra beat to kind of process what was going on. And you take away that first reader, you disrupt it with timing, and it's a very timing based offense. I think you could cause problems. And I think that's, when you talk about a guy who has to make sure he doesn't get hit in the pocket, we could see this offense limited a bit just for that reason. Also, they got lucky, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle didn't miss a game last year. They still don't have much at tight end to speak of. If one of those guys does go down, at least Gesicki was more of like a pass catcher. So this offense, I think this team in general still has a low floor. Their ceiling is high, especially when Ramsey's healthy and if Tua is healthy, but the floor is low. So if I had to pick one of these AFC teams, to miss the playoffs, the Dolphins are about even money each way for that. I'd actually go with them missing just because I think that AFC North is going to have, potentially 3 teams in the playoffs. And I think the Dolphins are just kind of lumped in still with the Jets here, trying to, Buffalo's that clear top dog in the AFC East. But the Dolphins, I think that Ramsey injury is a killer for them.
Yeah, you mentioned Hill and Waddle. You mentioned Hill and Waddle. If either one of those goes down,
it's a different offense.
Who's in there? River Craycraft or
Eric Ezukama had a good preseason game the other, so maybe he gets some more playing time. I know they got Berrios to kind of take the Sherfield role, but it's not an impressive offense, not an impressive group of pass. I think Devon Achane, the rookie running back, could be a lot more involved in the pass game if they need more juice. He has some speed. And they do have Mostert and Wilson still there, so they could kind of use him as more of a chess piece. But there's a low floor on this Dolphin team. So I don't really want to bet like their median win total either way. Like you said, I think it's more or less right. They just above average kind of team, 9-ish win team. But it's not looking as good as it did maybe a month or two ago. So I think they're kind of lumped into this gauntlet with the Jets, who are also at 9.5. Little more juice to the over than Miami, minus 122 to the over at FanDuel or the Jets. Now, a lot of people, the first thing I always wonder with a team like the Jets, Hard Knocks, there's a lot of hype behind this team. I'm actually surprised to learn that teams on Hard Knocks are 9-8-1 to the over. So it's not, I would have thought they would have had more of an underlean just due to the hype. In the last 6 years, 5 of them have gone under. So maybe that is catching on as betting becomes more popular. But overall, no real edge either way, fading or not fading the Hard Knock team. But where are you on the Jets now? I know we were kind of coming into the season looking to fade them just based on all the Aaron Rodgers hype and the fact that their defense was super lucky to be as healthy as it was last year. But what are you thinking as we sit here at the end of August?
Yeah, the defense is certainly legit, and that's what happens when you draft a cornerback in Sauce Gardner, who I was obsessed with in college. And he's even become more elite quicker than I thought, and I was his biggest fan in college, and I think anyone thought. But you you bring in an elite corner like that, it can change everything in a hurry. And the Jets went from like a bottom 5 defense to a top 5 defense. And it wasn't fluky. Like, it wasn't like turnover based, and it wasn't like they just were, extraordinarily lucky in the red zone and third downs. Like, this defense is legit. The concern would be, they were extremely healthy all season. So does the injury bug hit them? I'm much more, but I believe in the defense for sure. It was a solid second year as well. I've many more concerns about the offense. It's, first of all, the offense is 100% better than it was last year because you actually have a competent quarterback at the minimum. And last year you had the worst quarterback in the league. The question then becomes, what is the ceiling of the offense with Aaron Rodgers? Who is Aaron Rodgers now? He is, how old is he? Didn't he forget if he just had a birthday?
Aaron Rodgers is
40
now. Right? No, he will be 40 on December 2nd of this season.
Okay, so he's gonna be 40 years old.
Since his age 40 season. That's yeah,
age 40 season. And if you look at some of the metrics over the past 2 years, specifically like his deep ball, it looks like he's on a decline, which would make sense. But then there's, hey, he was injured last year. He was dealing with an injury, so maybe that contributed. I tend to think it makes sense that he would be on the decline. So he's certainly not the quarterback that he was. But he recently had an MVP season. And he's now playing in front or behind a pretty shaky offensive line. Like, that's one of my biggest questions about this team. Like, what's going to happen? The key to this whole team might be Mekhi Becton. Like, is he going to get it together? Is he going to end up?
Well, he did have a really good preseason
he had a good
game.
preseason.
The last time out. Yeah.
He's like
last time out that it was.
Yeah, but who
Finally.
knows? Is he going to start at right guard and maybe other pieces, fall into place? But there's certainly some major concerns about this offensive line, and rightfully so. And that's not ideal for a 40-year-old aging quarterback who can't really move around. So, and on top of that, you have the hire of Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, this is just everything they did was just for Rodgers. Like, just bring in his buddies at the receiver, bring in his buddy to be the offensive coordinator. And like, part of me thinks Rodgers is just going to run the show on his own, and it's not going to be the most efficient offense. And, Rodgers is, he marches to the beat of his own drum. And if things go wrong early on and, they're in the AFC, it's a tough schedule. The New York media and with that offensive line, I mean, it could get ugly fast. And just, I could see things getting contentious. So I don't love the offensive coordinator hire. I'm not sure what we're going to get from Rodgers, but the offense, look, is definitely improved. They had Rodgers last year, no doubt a playoff team. But I project 9-2, 9-3. Their win total sitting at what translates to about 9-6.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
9-5, 9-6. So it's a pass for me, and I'm just really intrigued to see how this offense comes together, particularly the offensive line, and then what the play calling looks like, and then what Rodgers has left in the tank. If he has the form that he did 2 years ago, God bless him, and the Jets are a real contender. But I have my doubts.
Yeah, and that defense was top 5 in DVOA. The 2 times Rodgers has had a top 5 defense, 2009 and 2010. 2009 was that crazy wild card game against the Cardinals with a 51-45 loss. But in 2010, that was the year the Packers won the Super Bowl. So, this is not
also
the
28
usual type of defense for Rodgers. Exactly. That's what I was getting to. It's not the usual type of defense, but this is also not the Rodgers we've seen even a couple years ago when he was winning those MVPs. He pretty much had his worst season in many metrics and in many ways last year. If you look at, his QBR was 39.3. That's easily a career low. So that, at age 39, that does worry me. Even with, I know he was playing kind of with a thumb injury, but Garrett Wilson, we love him, but he's not Devontae Adams. Is there going to be take some time to kind of truly get acclimated there? This Hackett Rodgers combo. What is that? Is outside of the LaFleur, kind of scheme and whatnot. Is it going to be the same? Is the MVP years? There's a lot of question marks here. So another team that and this is going to be a theme for these AFC teams. I think you want to lean under for any of these teams, especially if you're looking to make a bet and you're kind of not sure either way. It's a pass for me, but I do have them a little lower than 9.5. But there's only so many teams that are going to be able to get to double-digit wins and make the playoffs in this AFC. You got the Dolphins, the Jets, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Browns, even the Steelers probably in that mix. Maybe the Titans challenge the Jaguars. There's a lot of teams. Broncos, some people may think I have my doubts, but there's just a lot of teams here in the AFC. So I would lean under with the Jets, but they could have, if everything breaks right for their defense and it's able to stay healthy, Rodgers isn't going to lose you a ton of games. I just, it might kind of be like that Brady year last year where, he's going to get rid of the ball really quick, especially if the O-line isn't good. And, if the defense keeps them in it, they'll win games. If they don't, it'll look like, 8-9 or 7-10, like the Bucs last year. So that's where I am with the Jets. The Patriots, you mentioned that you think they are going to be in for kind of a rough year. Their win total was 7.5 at FanDuel. The under is juiced to minus 142. Now, Belichick is 17-9-2 over, but a lot of that, of course, has come with Tom Brady at the helm. Defense was number 3 in DVOA, but what are you seeing for this Pats team in 2023?
Yeah, the Patriots in the post Philip Dorsett are 25-25. No, but since Brady left, they're just 25-25, and I don't know if Belichick is just at the end of the road and he's just tired. His defense last year was still good, but just some of the things you see, the discipline, the mistakes, the special teams were a disaster. That never would happen under Belichick. I think they were dead last in DVOA on special teams. That's shocking for a Patriots team, which is one of the reasons they completely overhauled their special teams unit. So hopefully they get a bump there. But it's on the positive side. The defense is going to be good. I don't know. Like last year was probably the peak of how they could perform. So I don't think they're going to get any better. They're not going to get any extra wins from the defense. If anything, the defense could only take a slight step back. The good news is it's going to be a good defense, and the offense at least will have some structure. Last year was just, I don't know what. Another thing, what was Belichick doing? Like handing the reins to Joe Judge and Matt Patricia? Like, just mind-blowing. So now you bring in Bill O'Brien. The hope is that, that he can control the offense, and Belichick maybe can rein in some of those other issues on special teams, the discipline, and you will actually have an offensive coordinator calling offense. What a concept. The problem, and O'Brien and Mac Jones have a lot of familiarity with each other. They were together at a marriage at Alabama, and Mac Jones obviously thrived there, but it was Alabama. Look at all the talent that he had. But I look at this offense. I like the hire, and the staff should just be more competent overall. But I just don't like what they did in the offseason to try to help Jones, who I'm not necessarily a big believer in. The wide receiver group is extremely underwhelming, one of the most underwhelming in the league. And the offensive tackle positions are very worrying. And it was a problem the other night in preseason, and it's just preseason, but it was something that was extremely worried about coming in to the preseason and obviously the regular season with, Trent Brown right tackle, left tackle. I mean, everything is just up in the air, and it could, throw in now Mac Jones, who just looks like he took a step back last year. Obviously, not in a great situation, but a very underwhelming wide receiver group. Like, this offense is going to struggle, and I just don't think they have enough firepower to really compete in the AFC. Oh, and by the way, per my power ratings, they have the number one most difficult schedule in the NFL. It is a absolute gauntlet from start to finish, and I'm going to bet on something to happen that hasn't happened in 25 years, and that is the Patriots to finish last in the division, minus 120. I make it closer to about minus 150. This division is obviously one of the best in the NFL. We just went through the Dolphins, Bills, and Jets. The Jets are obviously much more improved on offense now. There's a chance that the Dolphins, Bills, and Jets all finish with 9+ wins. Yep. And, maybe the Patriots steal a couple wins late and they finish 8-9 and finish in last place. But they would actually go over their win total, and the under is actually taking some money. So I actually prefer finishing in last over the win total. I lean the under on their win total as well. I think it's just going to be a long year in Foxborough. This offense just has way too many question marks in a loaded conference and a loaded schedule.
Yeah, I think they're going to be one of those teams that's a tough out every week, because I do think their defense is going to be good. I think their defensive game plans will be good, but, you got to play Kansas City in Foxborough. You got to play Philly in Foxborough. The Chargers come to Foxborough, and then you go on the road. You're going to Dallas, Pittsburgh, Denver, which is not easy, even if they're not great. Denver's a lot better at home, as it usually is. And then that AFC East, yeah, it's going to be tough to get to 8-9 wins as the fourth best team. I lean under as well, and I don't mind taking the under. It's a little juiced up, but there's always a chance that a team like the Jets or Dolphins, especially the Dolphins, I think some injuries, things could bottom out for one of those teams. But I do think the Patriots, as it stands coming into the year, are the fourth best team, and there is a significant tier drop from them to the Jets and Dolphins.
Yeah, I'm probably going to take a bit of the under. My biggest position will be on them finishing in last, but you're right. I'll take some under as well, since I show a tad bit of value. I'm low on them, and then in the event that Tua has a concussion in week 1, Rodgers tears his ACL, and one of these teams, or Josh Allen breaks his leg, and then all of a sudden one of these other teams, the floor falls out, and the Patriots still only win 6 or 7 games. So yeah, I'll probably have a little bit of the under, but I like them finishing in fourth, minus 120. When I price it out, I make it closer to minus 150. And by the way, they also, one of their home games against the Colts is overseas. They lose a home game there. So yeah, it's a brutal schedule. I mean, look, they start Philly, Miami, at the Jets, at Dallas. Could start 0-4, and who knows what's going to go on with Mac Jones and that offense from there.
Yeah, agreed. It should take some time. It should be a better spot than last year, but the team might be better than last year, but the record might not be. All right. Football season is officially back, which means a lot of new listeners for the show, a lot of new viewers. So now is a great time to talk about first impressions. And whether you're a football team or a football fan, you want to make a good one. For me, that means taking care of my skin, which I'm doing with the help of our new sponsor, Caldera Lab. Caldera Lab has a skincare routine I can do quickly so I can get back to placing bets. It's just 2 products in the daytime, 2 at night. And since we're all about the numbers here, I should mention that Caldera Lab is the leader in men's skincare, and clinical trials found 94% of men's skin showed an overall younger looking appearance after using Caldera Lab for just a few weeks. That means Caldera Lab is even more of a lock than Stuckey, leading off the six pack with the ugliest underdog of the week. And just for our audience, we have an exclusive offer, the best offer anywhere. For Caldera Lab, use code ACTION, ACTION, at calderalab.com and get 20% off right now. That's 20% off with code ACTION at calderalab.com. Make unforgettable first impressions that lead to those magic words, "You look younger." Get 20% off at calderalab.com with code ACTION. All right, let's go and talk this AFC South. And I think both of us agree that there's some value on the Titans. I like their win total over 7.5. I like their division odds at plus 310. For me, and there's a lot of things to like about the Titans kind of bouncing back, but I think the best way to put it is we've seen Mike Vrabel, who we both love as a coach, 4-1 to the over on the win totals. The one under was last season. They started 7-3 last year, then go on a 7-game losing streak. 4 of those losses, 1 score. 3 of those Ryan Tannehill missed. 1 was a game where they lose to the Texans by 5. Malik Willis throws for 99 yards and 2 picks. They lose a game to Jacksonville, for the playoffs, where they're up 16-13 with under 3 minutes to go before their street free agent quarterback, who's replacing Willis, gets fumble 6. So this Titan team, even last year with all those injuries, not far off from what we usually see this team do. So DeAndre Hopkins, healthier defense. Tannehill's still there, probably a better situation at backup than last year at least. I think this team can hold it, stay right there with Jacksonville and challenge for the division. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. We'll be betting Tennessee to win the division. I think you can maybe find a plus 350 out there, maybe. As always, shop around. The narrative changes in the NFL are always so fascinating to me. But as you mentioned, the Titans were 7-3, and the Jaguars were 3-7. Mm-hmm. The Titans were also the reigning number 1 seed in the AFC the year prior. And then the Titans just, suffered all kinds of injuries across the board, especially on defense, but then, even to Tannehill. And it was just, everything just snowballed on them. Then you had the Jaguars, who went on a run to close out the year, get to the playoffs. But can we take a closer look at that run? So they beat, the run started really after the bye week. And look, there's no doubt that Trevor Lawrence took a step forward. And things started to click for him. And he definitely improved. And the offense could have even more potential this year, adding Calvin Ridley. Could open up the top of that offense and open things up for the other receivers. And, you would anticipate that Lawrence continues to make strides. But let's take a look at that run. They beat Baltimore on a 2-point conversion by 1. And then they lose by 100 at Detroit. Then they beat, a beat-up Tennessee team. They beat Dallas in overtime on a pick 6. They beat Chris Streveler and Zach Wilson and the Jets. They beat the Texans. And then they beat Josh Dobbs and the beat-up the Titans again, barely. 20-16 in the game for the playoffs. And then in the playoffs, they're down 30-0, and the Chargers pull the Chargers. So, that run is just, who did it really come against? And all the bounces went their way. I still have a lot of questions about this team. The offensive line, number 1, still has major question marks. You have the Cam Robinson suspension as well. And the defense is still very poor, in my opinion. The pass defense is extremely underwhelming. And also, they barely had any injuries across the board, for what it's worth, last year, offense and defense. And guess what's rearing its ugly head already? Injuries on defense. I mean, you had Devon Hamilton, who's really important today, was seen on crutches. He has a back injury. They don't know when he's going to return. Smoot is not expected back until October. They signed Mondo as a free agent for some depth in the interior. He's on injured reserve. So, they have Fadakasi's week to week with a foot injury. So the trenches on that defensive line, on that defense, are already in question, and the injuries are already starting to rear their ugly head, which will really impact the run defense, which is actually legit. And, schematically and just personnel wise, they should be good against the run. But their pass defense is very poor. And I have questions about this team. People just remember that late run last year, and I think are too infatuated with the Jags. They're vulnerable. I think the Titans can take full advantage. Look, I trust Vrabel. I like the defense. There's some questions at linebacker for sure, but the defensive line is really strong. And, they got a lot of experience last year with all of those injuries. The Hopkins addition is just massive. It can't, just your possession, first down, reliable guy. That means also you're not asking as much of Treylon Burks, who I think can really, really take advantage and explode this year. You have a really promising tight end who has a ton of explosiveness as well. And by the way, I said that I was president of the Sauce Gardner fan club in college. Well, last year I was the president of the Tajay Spears fan club. I love him, and I love just him as a change of pace, little thunder and lightning back. And I think he can actually do some things for this offense. They have a new offensive coordinator who, last year, the Titans were so good in the first quarter, and then they could not move the ball at all. And I think that just Todd Downing would start game planning, come up with the script, and then just start drinking, and then forget about the rest of the game. I don't know what happened. So that can only get better from a play calling predictability standpoint. The biggest question on this team, which is certainly a concern and could really collapse everything, is the offensive line. The Petit Ferrer suspension is massive. He's going to miss the first 6 games. They're projected starting right tackle. So, what are they going to do? I don't know. Some of the other pieces are very questionable. You got to hope Andre Dillard steps up at left tackle. But, are they going to move Skoronski, the rookie who I like, but he's a rookie? Could they move him to right tackle? But then if you do that, then you're moving your right guard to left guard. You're moving Brunskill probably to left guard. You're moving all these guys around, which, could go very wrong. But then when Petit Ferrer comes back, then you're moving everyone back again. So mid-season. So I'm fascinated to see what they do with this offensive line, because it's certainly a concern. That suspension really threw a wrench into this offense. So that's definitely a concern. Regardless, I agree. I see value in the over. I project, 8.5, and their win total sitting at 7.5, juiced a little bit to the over. And I'll be on the Titans to win the division as well. After everything went wrong for them last year and everything went wrong for Jags, I think the bounces could go the Titans' way. And generally speaking, when Vrabel, doesn't have everything fold in on him like last year, he's going to overperform expectations, and he's probably going to win a few more coin flips than not. So like the Titans, selling the Jags, leaning under on the Jags as well. But I don't think the Titans can win more than 10 games in the AFC. So, taking the Titans for the division is in a way an indirect, some indirect exposure on the Jaguars under at a much juicier price. Because I think in order for the Titans to win the division, they probably finish 10-7, even 9-8 with a tiebreaker, and then the Jags finish, 9-8, 8-9.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the Titans over has a ton of value, especially for a win total over, which you don't usually see. I already bet their division odds. I still like it. It's still, floating around, like you said, plus 310 to plus 350. And for the Jags, just to add to what you talked about, this team, it looks sexy on paper, but it really is all about their skill position guys. Lawrence, Ridley, Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne. Outside of them, their O-line is pretty shaky. You don't really have anyone who graded out above average. Robinson is going to miss the last 4 games. And then on defense, this was the 26th ranked defense in DVOA, 30th against the pass. Didn't really do much in the offseason. Now, they should be better in the sack department. They were 4th in pressure rate, but the sacks didn't really match up. But still, especially with, as you mentioned, the depth concerns, the injury luck kind of evening out. The defense could be an issue. The O-line could be an issue. So you're really just talking about a team with great skill players, which is enough in this division. But I agree. I think the Titans are the team to bet here. And another way to get some exposure to some, a way to bet the Jags under, you could bet them to miss the playoffs at plus 158 on FanDuel. I've seen it, I think, as high as plus 190, because you don't expect 2 teams to come out of the AFC South, just with how tough the AFC is, with the Jets and Dolphins in the East, and the all 4 teams in the North, and, the Chargers, maybe even the Broncos in the West. You doubt 2 teams will come out of the South. So whoever wins that division, so you could bet Titans to win the division and also bet Jags not to make the playoffs, both of those at plus money. That's how I'd kind of attack those 2 squads.
By the way, right, Todd, next year for your I know that you're heavy in the fantasy game. Tajay Spears RB1, as you guys like to the lingo. But I do want to, before we move on, I want to ask you your thoughts on because the potential of Ridley, who he did get to play next to Julio. He was younger, but the potential in this offense, just adding him and his speed, could really open things up. But we've never really quite seen a situation like this, right? Like, he took a year off for mental health and then he was suspended. So he's been away for 2 full seasons. So this is both, I guess, a betting and a fantasy question. Like, how are you projecting him? And based on where he was at 2 years ago and how much of a drop off, what are you doing? What are your just general thoughts on Ridley and what he'll do for this offense?
I obviously think it's gonna be a pretty big boost, because you're essentially replacing Marvin Jones with Ridley. Now, Ridley is, like you mentioned, 29 on the other side of his prime, so you're not quite projecting him for quite as great as he was in Atlanta that last year or 2. But again, you're talking about a 29-year-old Calvin Ridley still kind of squarely in his prime, or maybe just coming down from it, versus and a guy who's fresh versus a Marvin Jones, well on the other side of 30, not really being able to contribute too much. I think Ridley's going to get you a ton more separation. And, we both were just kind of scratching our head at times with Trevor Lawrence. And even last year, it didn't always look great. So I think, another receiver that can get the kind of separation Ridley can and be more of a number 1A with Christian Kirk. I think that is going to help. I think the Jaguars probably going to be in a lot of shootouts. That's kind of going to be the bottom line here. Shaky O-line, shaky defense, great skill players. Seems like a good fantasy situation. A lot of shootouts. As far as if you're just curious about fantasy itself, Kirk is the guy that I actually have undervalued. I think people are undervaluing Kirk because Ridley's coming back, but Kirk still a very good player who can move around. So the offense should produce, is what I'm saying. But it still could, like you said, equate to 8-9 wins, because the defense could be bad, and we saw last year they didn't really beat anybody.
And if the injury bug, actually, the injury regression hits, then it could be maybe 7 or 8 wins. And I would actually agree with you, not being a fantasy expert, but if Ridley comes in, maybe there's some rust, but if his speed and his ability to take the top off the defense, I think the biggest beneficiary of that is Kirk.
Yeah. And Peterson, we trust Peterson, on offense more than not. But let's talk about the Texans and Colts here. They're kind of tied with a win total of 6.5. We like the Titans over 7.5. Jags win under 9.5. But the Colts and Texans are both 6.5 now. The Texans, they're a team that I thought, earlier in the offseason might be a sharp kind of, bet them over. I think they're going to be a team that I'm going to be betting on as a dog a lot of weeks, because this is not the same tanking Texans. They traded the first round pick to Arizona. They got their quarterback. they did sign some veterans, so the roster isn't, in complete tank mode. Jimmy Ward, Dalton Schultz, some guys, the receiving core should be some options here with Dell and, Robert Woods. I'm not expecting much from, but you got Mechie. And then the Colts, they're also going to start a rookie quarterback, in Anthony Richardson. So how are you kind of differentiating between both of these teams? And do you have a lead, which one is going to finish last? Is there any value on the overs or the unders, or what are you thinking with these two?
The tanking Texans, the anti-tanking Texans, they forgot the tank in the finale and didn't get the number 1 overall pick. And I think that's ultimately going to cost them down the line, as I think Young will be better than Stroud. And then the Texans, I don't know what they were doing with that trade for Will Anderson, giving up all that they did. That's going to doom them in the future, but it'll help them this year for sure. I'm not a believer in like Stroud rising to this star quarterback level at any point in his career, but he's pro ready and he's extremely accurate, especially when he's protected. And I actually really like this Texans offensive line.
When healthy. When
healthy. But they were already pretty good.
Yep.
You have some pretty good tackles. And now you added Scruggs. Shaq Mason was another good get. And then, as you mentioned, they brought in Dalton Schultz. I actually think that they can find enough weapons from what they got. I really like Tank Dell. I actually really like Xavier Hutchinson as well. He's an intriguing piece that maybe can contribute some. And then you got Nico Collins and Noah Brown. Not sure how much you'll get from Robert Woods, but maybe he's just a good veteran presence to have in that younger wide receiver room. And for Stroud as well. So, I don't mind the offense. And I actually did the special teams are sneaky good. Look out for Dell potentially contributing there as well. But good punter, reliable kicker, good coverage units last year. And then the defense, I kind of like a little bit. I think this could be an average defense, not a really bad one. They have, I like the Jimmy Ward signing. Jalen Petrie is a stud. I've watched him a lot. I think he could be a really good safety in this league. And then Derek Stingley flashed. He showed some flash and potential last year before he got injured at one cornerback spot. And then you got Desmond King in the slot, Steven Nelson, Shaq Griffin, some veterans. So, the secondary could be decent. And then you sign, I also like Malik Collins. You get Will Anderson to help the pass rush. Jerry Hughes was really good last year. Then you sign some veterans at linebacker to try and get one more contract. Yeah, Perriman, Kirksey, Littleton. So the defense has some pieces. So this is not, the Texans of the last couple of years that are just dreadful. I actually think that they're a better team than the Colts. Both similar. They got rookie quarterbacks. You have new coaches. But I think Stroud is more NFL ready right now. Is more NFL ready right now to come in, contribute. He's way more accurate. And I think that I like this team. I power rate them ahead of the Colts. We'll talk about in a second. So I like the Colts. We talked about, the Jags, unless Trevor Lawrence gets hurt, they're not finishing last. We like the Titans this year. So I can get plus 200 on the Colts finishing in last, which I love. And I also like the Colts under. I think it's currently sitting at six and a half. Really 6.6. You can get, I think, plus money on under 6.5. I project 5.78 wins. And it's a first time coach, a rookie quarterback who, look, he has unbelievable athleticism and talent. And he's going to make some unbelievable plays that make you go, wow, every week. But I don't think he's NFL ready right now. He played behind a ridiculously good offensive line last year at Florida with a really good backfield. And if you look at his underlying metrics as far as accuracy, catchable balls, not great. And now he's playing in front of an offensive line that just continues to get worse and worse and worse. And why are we just to assume that they're going to go back to 2020 for him, where all we've seen the last 2 years. I mean, Quentin Nelson, I don't know what's really happened to him. He went from so dominant to just now. And there's obviously questions at right guard. Kelly has regressed a bit. The tackle positions are questionable as well. And then you look at even their skill position players. Like Michael Pittman would be a good 2. I don't necessarily think he's your reliable 1. What's even going on with Jonathan Taylor? That's a question mark as well. But with Richardson's, and I don't like the coordinator hires either. And then you look at the defense. We know Shaq Leonard doesn't exist since he changed his name. I like some of the pieces they have on the defensive line, but the secondary is very questionable. I think you compare these teams. I like the Texans' overall roster better, and I think Stroud is more NFL ready right now to come in and contribute. And even if you look at the Colts' schedule, like at the end of the season, like it's rough. It's at Tennessee, at Cincy, Pitt, at Atlanta. You get Vegas and Houston to close out the year, and it's going to be an overall easy schedule with their division. But after the bye week, it's some tough games in there, and that's maybe when you would expect Richardson to take a step forward. So yeah, I like the Colts under, and I like the Colts finishing in last place. A slight lean to the Texans over. This roster is kind of sneaky.
Yeah,
I will be looking. I agree with you. I'll be looking to back them, by the way, on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Colts. I like that, kind of finding a different way, but beyond just the win total, to go under. And I should point out, and this applies to the Texans and Colts, teams that have a top 10 pick at quarterback start 8 or more games as a rookie. Going back to 2002, just 11, 18, and 2 toward the win total over 38% over the last 10 seasons, down to just 27%, just 4-11 with 2 pushes. So, I mean, I think, the Texans, I would have leaned over definitely at the 5.5. I think this line is a lot more into it. I think they'll be competitive week to week, and I think I'd rather bet them that way than necessarily take their win total over, because 7 wins, it still seems like a stretch to me. I think they'll be in a lot of games. D'Amico on defensive minded coach, better defense, decent O-line when healthy. So I think the Texans will hang around and, still juiced up to the over, so I don't hate it, but definitely looking for ways to fade the Colts. And I do think the Texans are the 3rd best team in this division. And they'll look a lot different from just the tank version of them last year.
Yeah, I should clarify that I'm not betting the Texans over. Don't show any value now. Yeah, did like it at 5.5. Slight lean to the over, gut feeling, but also that's correlated with the Colts, finishing in last at plus 200. Going to need the Texans to get at least kind of close to that, or if not over.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this pod with the AFC East and South. Just to recap, Stuck and I both like the Titans to win the division. Stuck likes the Colts to finish in last, the Patriots to finish in last. We both lean under on the Jaguars as well. And, rest of the AFC East, lean over on the Bills, Dolphins, and Jets a little bit under. And that's going to do it. We'll have the AFC West and AFC North episode out next, so stay tuned for that, and then we'll follow it up with the NFC. You can find Stucky on X at Stucky2. I'm at Chris Raybon. We're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app, where you can follow our bets or you can track your own. Great app. Be sure to download that. Until next time, let's get this money.